And Mr. Smith, would you like to do roll call?
Mrs. Showerman,
Here.
Mrs. Valella,
Here.
Chairman Rennie.
Here. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to be heard? Anyone from the public who wishes to be heard? And one more time, anyone from the public who wishes to be heard? All right, we will go on then to the approval of the minutes from previous meetings. This covers 3 different meetings, the regular meeting from October 27th and November 19th, and then also the reorganization meeting from January 14th. And Ann, I realize you weren't here for those meetings, but just if you have any questions, I guess, I hope you've had a chance to review those.
Yes, I have no questions.
All right. Then, Mr. Smith, would you like to call for the approval? Could have the
I think,
question.
Madam Chair, you'll want to ask for a motion and a second.
Oh,
for approval,
Excuse me.
of
It
course.
looks so easy from the outside, right? Could I have a motion for the approval of these minutes?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith, would you like to?
On the approval of minutes from October 27th, November 19th, and January 14 of 21, Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Mrs. Valella,
Yes.
Chairwoman Rennie.
Yes. All right, we will move on then to the election report. And Mr. Smith, item A on the election report, is that something that you would like to address?
Yes, ma'am. I can walk the board through that and take any questions that follow. There are 3 questions that are going to be on the ballot this spring. Some of you probably read about the 4th one that didn't make it owing to the lack of notification. That was the one for victims of abuse. And the Secretary of State, in fact, had to resign after that particular incident. But these questions, there's already been some local advertising by the state. The county will place an ad during April that will feature the questions. And in your packets, you should see the ballot question followed by the plain
That's
English
probably why,
statement.
huh?
So the first question, shall the Pennsylvania Constitution be amended to change the existing law and increase the power of the General Assembly to unilaterally terminate or extend a disaster or emergency declaration, and the powers of the Commonwealth agencies to address the disaster regardless of its severity pursuant to that declaration through a concurrent resolution by a simple majority, thereby removing the existing check and balance of presenting a resolution to the governor for approval or disapproval. In the ad, as I said, we will have the question and the plain English statement. I've always had to laugh that the phrase plain English statement rarely applies to these types of explanations, but they will also appear as a document in all the mail and absentee ballots that we sent out, a copy of the question and the statement. And also it's going to be posted in every polling place, a copy of the question and the plain English statement. It's a yes or no situation. And of course, it means that those individuals who are either not affiliated or are third party or members of other political bodies are able to vote in the primary on the question only. So that is a further iteration of our ballot will simply be the questions for those individuals who aren't Democratic or Republican Party members. The next question, shall the Pennsylvania Constitution be amended by adding a new section providing that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged because of an individual's race or ethnicity? And I think I skipped a page. The second question actually will be, shall the Pennsylvania Constitution be amended to change existing law so that a disaster emergency declaration will expire automatically after 21 days, regardless of the severity of the emergency, unless the General Assembly takes action to extend the disaster emergency? The governor may not declare a new disaster emergency to respond to dangers facing the Commonwealth unless the General Assembly passes a concurrent resolution. The General Assembly enacts new laws for disaster management. So obviously, as we can see, a couple of these have flowed from the situation over the last year or so with Governor Wolf and some disagreements with the Assembly on the nature of state emergencies. I'm open to take any questions from board members.
Guess I'll ask a question, Doug, since this is the first time this has happened since I've been in office. It's not whether we're voting to put these in, they're automatically on, right? Because it's a state, it's from the state. So we're just reviewing them.
Yes, ma'am, that's
Thank
right.
you.
Just so we have an understanding of what people will be seeing, I think, on the ballot and what they will be receiving.
That's what I assumed, but I just wondered.
Sure.
Thank you for asking that, Ellen. I was wondering that same thing, so I appreciate you bringing that out.
I agree.
If I didn't say it clearly, on the ballot itself will just be the question, not the plain English statement. So that's the reason, at least that's the reason why it's being included in the mail, the English statement, and why it's going to be posted in every precinct, because on the ballot itself is just the question. It would probably make the ballots incredibly long to include all that verbiage.
Yeah.
One issue that probably will be, it will affect, and not just because of the questions, but they certainly add to it. We will probably see, it will take a little bit longer for ballots to scan in this environment with what's going to be a two-sided ballot, 14 inches long. That's what we'll have in the precincts, as opposed to the 8.5 by 11 that we had last year. So there will be a bit of a delay, and in reaction to some of the delays we had due to the crowds in 20, we are looking to place extra scanners in some districts. Mr. Chirpak is going to be working on that in his capacity at the warehouse. We're going to be identifying some of the larger precincts, Washington Township, for instance, some of the Mill Creek precincts, Fairview, Harbor Creek, where the numbers warrant having a second scanner. It complicates things just a little bit in terms of collection of results, but we believe it's absolutely necessary given in this case, the length of the ballot. But by the time we get around to the next presidential, we're certainly going to be using more than one scanner in places to help manage the large crowds.
I have another question for you, Doug, if I may.
course.
With the elimination on the outside of the envelope of the name and address, how are the people at the courthouse going to mark the books that people return their ballots? Or now is the name and address on the inside?
Actually, there is a return address that has the individual's information on it. When we send them their ballot, the return envelope includes their name on the return area.
Okay,
So
so
there-
you, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, so that will be there. It just won't be next to the signature location on the envelope.
Okay,
It's going to be in the usual return address area.
so they only eliminated the step of the people having to write their name and address on it.
That's correct.
I think we lost a few last time because people hadn't filled that out.
You're correct, though I don't believe here in Erie County, we use that as a reason not to count a ballot. There were some counties where I believe that was a reason for exclusion. So due to various lawsuits, that's the language that the state used in communicating it. That was a reason why limiting some of those factors that could be used to disqualify a ballot.
And did that make a large increase in the cost of the envelopes with the name and address already put on them?
Well, we probably have about 5,000 of those envelopes that are going to go in the garbage. So, and we're not alone in that regard. There's been a lot of carping around 67 counties about the fact that this change is being made again right after counties have tried to get their paper supplies ready. That, you know, in our case, of course, we had a vendor who, you know, we purchased these supplies from them, and the plan was to use the leftovers for this election. But of course, we won't be able to use the return envelopes that we have left over from the last election. It does
Right.
appear. Go ahead.
I just wondered if you have a cost on the new ones with the return addresses on them, did it go up considerably? Or not yet?
Do you mean in terms of postage? Or
Well,
just the
because
cost
now,
of the envelope
now
itself?
on the envelopes, we have to have the names and addresses already on them. So I didn't know if that made the cost increase a lot.
No, I don't see that. I don't see that
Okay.
affecting the cost of the product at all.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else from anyone? All right. Then Doug, do you have further report on anything else beyond this? And I realize that we're going to be covering possible change in polling place at another point in the agenda.
Yes, let's see. It's page. Sorry, I fooled myself.
Well, the election report, the notice of the election and so forth. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. So I thought I had a little bit just before that.
I think it's page 42, Doug.
Thank you. Page 42. It's actually towards the very end of your packet.
Oh, what, right. As far as the possible move of the precinct, I know, as I said, I know that was coming up. I wondered whether you had anything else you wish to comment on besides that.
Yes, so I just wanted to report to the board that there's been a great deal of activity from potential candidates getting petitions. We did have an issue wherein somehow, we're still not quite sure how, a few older petitions got mixed into the newer ones. The main difference between the old and the new is that circulators are no longer required to have a notarized statement. The office did reach out very quickly to everyone that may have been affected, just to make sure that nobody was concerned or upset in any way. If someone does bring an old petition back, it would be our plan to have them fill out a current statement of the circulator, and we would just append it to that old petition. We don't think that is going to be something that happens very much at all. But we didn't want to provide any sort of fodder for someone who might be looking to file a nuisance challenge with candidates. That was really our main concern. Unfortunately, some people who are in a competitive race will look for technicalities for which to file challenges, and even if they have little merit, they can be a real hindrance to first-time candidates who might have to hire a lawyer or be their own lawyer. Second or third on the list, I'm finalizing submission of their election security grant for $159,135 for expenses from 2020. $47,947 of it will be used for department wages. Those of you on council remember that when the two new election positions were created, part of the format for those positions was that the first year's costs were going to be submitted to the state for reimbursement from grants. The other $111,187, that's going to be covering printing and mailing costs related to mail-in and absentee ballots, as well as election day ballots. Once these election funds are received, that'll bring our total to $444,229 that we've been able to get back from the state in grants, and we didn't lose $1. Maybe we lost $2, but we've been very efficient in trying to get every single dollar that we could from the state, and the accounting department, to their credit, has been extremely helpful to us. Jan Ertl has been working with Jill Penzi, our receptionist, on these grants, and they've been doing a terrific job. Hence, they've been approved without much debate from the state. The last item is the notice of election, which you can see is I've laid out in your packets. That lists every office that is to be on the ballot. That is actually going in for publication tomorrow. It also mentions the date of the lot draw, which is Wednesday, March 17th, the day after the challenge period ends. For petitions, we are planning an in-person lot draw in the council chambers. As always, those who don't show up, we draw on their behalf. We're going to bring people into the room by office so that there aren't too many people jammed into one place. There will be another ad that we'll have to put in the newspaper in April. probably pretty close to the election. That ad will feature the constitutional questions. It will also feature a list of our polling places and information about the pre-canvassing and canvassing activities that we normally publish before every single election. After working with the Times a bit, the cost for tomorrow's ad is about $5,500, and I'm hopeful that the ad in May will be of a similar cost. And for the moment, that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any other questions from any of the board?
I just have one. We approved the minutes because that is what happens at the time we had the meetings. But Kim is listed as vice chair of the Board of Elections, and now she's not even on the Board of Elections. So I didn't know if that needed addressed.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Smith and I talked about that before this meeting. We have a few options in front of us. Well, a couple options. One is to elect another vice chair of the board. Since there are presently only 3 of us serving on the board, and we don't know what the outcome of the primaries elections will be, I didn't feel that it was necessary to have a vice chair because someone could be appointed to act as chair at any meeting that we have. It's not absolutely necessary to have a vice chair.
That's absolutely fine. I was just questioning it because
Right.
of what the minutes reflect.
Right. And well, first I'll say, are there any other questions? Okay. I did want to say that this is our first regular meeting, and so I just want to go on the record of thanking both of you for participating in this election board meeting, and thanking Ann especially for accepting our invitation to serve in this way. I think in the past year, we've had a lot of issues before us, and hopefully it will be a little bit easier this go round than it was last year. But you know, the goal is the same, is that we have a process in place that gives us security of elections, honesty, transparency, and effectiveness in registering the votes for people. And that will be the goal for this year as well. So I just wanted to go on the record for saying that before we move on to anything else. But in any case, thank you to both of you. With that being said, I would like to move on to our last item, and this is for possible board action, a possible change in polling place for location Erie 6-8 from Perry School. And Mr. Smith, would you like to talk about this at all?
Sure, I can run through it, and do have
And I know
Jim on the call, and I don't know if he has any new information. I'm sorry, did someone have a? So
No.
6-8 is currently at Perry School. There are 3 districts at that school in the gym. Due to some conditions in the building and probably the reality of the number of voters from the presidential, it was a bit of a mob scene in November. And so we're looking to reduce that back to just 2 districts. Since 6-8 is the newest one, we're looking at that one in particular. The other 2 are within their, within the 3rd ward rather. So, no, I'm sorry. The other 2 are within their district at Perry, so we don't want to take those out of their district in favor of a polling place that doesn't belong. So we looked at a couple of options. St. Paul's currently has 2 districts, but they're smaller. 2,000 potential voters would be at that building as opposed to the 2,600 that are at Perry. Jim did some checking and believes that St. Paul's is large enough to accommodate 3. They also have 2 parking lots, and parking was an issue at Perry School. And they also have a chairlift. So that's one possible move, to put 6-8, which is pretty close to the district border. So that's one thing that is in favor of that. And that would be go along with 3-6 and 3-7 that are currently at St. Paul's. The second option would be to consider moving 6-8 to 29th and Elmwood. That's where we currently have 6-14. We could either double up at 29th and Elmwood, and Jim has also looked into that, and it appears we have the space and the parking to double up there. Or you could even consider moving 6-14 to 32nd and Green Garden. We are waiting for approval on that one. That, of course, means that we would be moving 2 sets of voters, and people have voted at Elmwood Presby for a long time. And I have to guess there would be a fair amount of phone calls generated from people in the neighborhood wondering why they have to now travel by car instead of walking. So that's one thing that goes against the idea of doing a double move. We have tried to resist a double move for a number of years, and that's the reason why 6-8 keeps bouncing around a bit like a beach ball, because we just haven't found a good home for it. The last permanent quote unquote home was at the BIZ Church on Cascade, which I believe it's on Cascade anyway. It was there for a number of years, and because of a flap concerning ADA accessibility, we moved out of there, and attempts to ask them to reconsider us back have failed, so that's not an option for us any longer. So my thought was that we should make a move now before the primary election, and hopefully one that will stick permanently.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed, and I'm going to invite comment from the other 2 board members, but St. Paul's is probably the closest to the precinct itself. Am I correct there, Doug?
That's correct.
All right. That would probably be the main reason I probably would favor the first option, unless there is another option that has come up since this agenda packet was released. But are there,
I'm not aware of any,
okay,
Madam Chair.
are there any other thoughts from the other board members? I'm concerned, I guess, about the number of people potentially at St. Paul's. But there is parking, and it is the closest to the actual precinct. It's within a couple of blocks in either direction.
Mr. Chirpak had indicated to me recently there was another location that used to house 3-7, I believe. But I don't know that we've heard anything as to whether that's an option for either 3-6 or 3-7. But at this point, it would appear that we could live with 3 districts in that church.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I have my hand up, Mary.
Oh, excuse me.
That's okay. I
Councilwoman.
don't think that 2,000 is unreasonable amount for St. Paul's. I believe there's 2,000 registered voters in my district, and there never seems to be a problem with getting them in and out of our polling place. And the fact that they have enough parking, I think, is huge. And then the chairlift for the elevators, I think that's another plus for it. And I'm fine with St. Paul's.
Mm. Thank you. All right, could I have, if there is no other discussion, could I have a motion to move 6-8 to St. Paul's for this primary?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded to move.
Andre
6-8.
has his hand up.
Listen, I hate to be a killjoy, but the 7 of us council people are still the official election board until we turn that paperwork in our ballot. So we're actually the ones that should be voting on this stuff. We are not candidates at this point. And so someone should have explained that as not to cause anyone any embarrassment. But the 7, and Tom, you can, our counselors on the line, you can correct me if I'm speaking out of sorts, but I do not believe that I am. I have never gotten off of the election board at this point, and I'm running for my 3rd term. And although we are correct in voting for a new person to come on the board, they would not be seated until we officially go on the ballot. And that roll call should reflect the 7 of us are the election board. And likewise, and in regard to that, we are the voting members of that board. And so actually, the new member should be here in sight only.
Okay, thank you for that input. That was not my understanding, and that is not how it was explained to me. So, Mr. Talarico, do you have any information on this that would help to clear this up?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chairman. To begin with, whether a member of the board, of the election board, has to recuse him or herself during a period of the candidacy is a policy matter. It's not a legal matter. And so the people who created the Home Rule Charter and the Administrative Code felt that as a matter of policy, any member of the Board of Election who takes out an application for to run for office should be prohibited from voting on any matters that come before the election board during the period of their candidacy. So that's what it says. And so the way I would interpret that is from the time that a member declares their interest in running for office and then takes out the petition, that person or that member should refrain from voting.
And I want
they would participate. All members could participate at a meeting, but cannot vote.
Counselor, that's not what we've done in practice in the past in any of my candidacies on here. What we subscribed to was when we turned those petitions in and we immediately became candidates is when that provision kicked in. Traditionally, people have taken petitions out and came back and not turned them back in. And I believe we had this conversation before, and that's where we landed it. And so, but you are the attorney, but that's not what the practice has been here.
Okay, Madam Chairman, I don't recall that, Andre, in the past, but let's not lose sight of the policy behind it. The whole idea is not to give the public the appearance of impropriety, namely that a candidate running for office is also making decisions on the election board. So I think that once a petition is taken out and a person announces their right to run for candidacy, as a matter of policy, they should not participate in actually voting on election board business.
Yeah, as far as I know, that's all.
And I could research it further, but it's really just a matter of policy.
Listen,
And
I don't want to be the proverbial fly in the buttermilk and stuff, and I'm not doing it to make any wave or anything. That really is my understanding of it. And just for clarity's sake, I would appreciate it if you would take a look at it, and we won't let it stop us from doing any business here today or proceeding, because it's really not that much to talk about or to vote on. But for clarity's sake, I think for moving forward in the future, we do need to have some clarity on that.
All right.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
we could have Mr. Talarico look into that further. I do agree that for appearances, and even just for the sake of propriety, that it makes sense to me that anyone who is running for office should not be voting. But, by all means, let's do what is correct. And actually, that was my push to get Ms. Valella on the board by February 16th, with the understanding that she would be a voting member.
Yeah.
So that's
Well, welcome, Ms.
fine.
Valella, and we've never had this situation before with so many council people running for office. So we are kind of in some uncharted territory. I still would like clarity going forward. And welcome, Ms. Valella. This has nothing to do with you and not wanting you or anything. It's
That's
just a
right.
matter of procedural stuff that
That's
I like to, I like to know what the what is, and I'd like to have it officially.
Great.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. With that said, this motion has been moved and seconded, and if we could have the vote, please, Mr. Smith.
Ms. Valella,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes.
Chairman Rennie,
Yes. Okay, it has passed. All right, moving back to the agenda. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Talarico.
if you don't mind, I would like to get back to the vice chair issue. And the administrative code specifically addresses the vice chairperson. And while Kim is tentatively, perhaps permanently off of the Board of Elections and was the vice chair, I think it's appropriate to appoint or to elect a vice chair. The vice chair assumes all the responsibilities of the chair in her absence, and if something should happen. So I think that the board should always have a vice chair.
I did look into that as well, and I guess I would question whether that's absolutely a necessity, especially at this point when we have only 3 members. I'm open to the possibility of having one, but it's my understanding that any of the board can be appointed to the temporary position of chair in the absence of the chair in conducting a meeting. Is that so within the administrative code?
Well, the administrative code says that the election board should have a chair, have a vice chair. And right now we do not have one. So that tells me that we should. And there are reasons why for the same reasons that vice chairs are necessary on all boards, they would be necessary for the same purposes on the election board. And that is to serve in the capacity of chair if and when the event occurs.
All right, very well. We have not had a chance to discuss this So we could either resolve it right now or resolve it at the next meeting, but there are only 3 of us. So it's,
Mary, I hate to interrupt, but I am going to have to leave to take care of a personal matter with my mother. So
right.
yeah, I'm gonna have to jump off soon, so.
All right, I'm going to say that if we could resolve this at a future meeting, and if we need to do it at the next one, we will do it then, and we'll address it. So is there anything else for the good of the order? If not, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn. All right, very well. Thank you. All right, this meeting is adjourned. And thank you, everyone. And I'm sorry it ran a little bit over.